Delighted to welcome our second plenary speaker, Dr. Anne-Marie Truscott de Mejia, a leading national and international scholar in bilingual education, CLIL, and language policy in Colombia. Anne-Marie has worked at the School of Language Sciences at Universidad del Valle in Cali, and more recently at the School of Education at Universidad de los Andes in Bogotá, as director of the PhD program in education and director of the research group Education for Bilingualism and Multilingualism. She holds a PhD in linguistics from Lancaster University in the United Kingdom and currently serves as associate editor for the Journal of Applied Linguistics. Her research interests include bilingual classroom interaction, language and education policy, interculturalism, and bilingual teacher development. She has published on the topics of bilingualism and bilingual education in Spanish and English. Her latest publication is Language Education in Multilingual Colombia, Critical Perspectives and Voices from the Field, Routledge 2023. Co-edited with Norbelo Miranda and Silvia Valencia Giraldo, so please give Anne-Marie a warm round of applause.
Thank you, Professor.
Is this all right? ¿Es así? O más para abajo, yo creo. No es. Okay. Okay, can you hear me okay? Yes? Okay, well, I'm very glad to be here today with you all, and I was very interested this morning to hear the presentation and also the presentations of the experiences, the projects that we heard about this morning. So what you will hear about this afternoon, some of it is going to be a little similar to what you've heard this morning, but hopefully there'll be other things as well. I'm delighted to be here, as I said, at the first, primer encuentro de instituciones educativas promotores de bilingüismo in Colombia. I have for a long time seen bilingualism and multilingualism as very important all over the world, but particularly as we live and work in Colombia. And I really feel that this this venture is going to lead to great things, especially as it's in very good hands. I was very recently in Massachusetts, in the University of Massachusetts, in October, and they have started, well, 2 or 3 years ago, a bilingual hub. And they're doing things, again, which are very interesting in bilingualism and multilingualism. So these different ventures are really important, I think, especially in this day and age, for all the things you've heard about this morning. Before I begin, I would like to thank very specially Carlo Granados de Única, who was the person who approached me to invite me. I know this is on the part of all of the directors, and also the bilingual the Red Nacional de Bilingüismo. This is going to be a bilingual presentation. I'm going to speak mostly in English, but I have sometimes in Colombia. And you see, when I speak Spanish, I have quite an English, so be prepared. Right. So what I would like to talk to you today about, next one, I don't know, are you here? Okay, this is what I plan to talk to you about today. From the National Bilingual Program to Bilingual Colombia. So we'll go a little bit over the developments. You've heard about them this morning, some of them. Then I want to talk about mixed discourses, because I think the way that things have worked out, they have worked out, but there have been different influences which have led to mixed discourses. Then something which is very important, not only in this scenario, intercultural perspectives, some questions and some answers, and then teacher education and development and conclusions. If I manage to finish in time, I will open up the for you if you want to ask questions, but that depends if I manage to finish in my 40 minutes or not. Okay, next one, please. Okay, I would like you, I'm not going to talk about all this, but I'd like you to look at this diagram, which is, comes from a presentation by Isabel Tejada and Bonilla. And what I would like you to, it covers 200 years. So if you look at the first part, this is in 1826, and it finishes in 2026, so 200 years. And I'm not going to talk about the whole thing for the moment. I'm just going to ask you to look at the first column, if you can see it, and you would notice that schooling, that education in Colombia in 1826 was highly multilingual, because it says compulsory subject across national public schools, Spanish, Latin, Greek, French, Hebrew, English, and, French, English, and an indigenous language, one with the most speakers depending on the region. So notice in 1826, there were various languages, European languages, but also indigenous languages in the education curriculum. And then the second box along, apparently, you may have heard about it, there was a visit by Colombia's president to France. And therefore, after this visit, there was a decision to adopt French as a compulsory subject for bachillerato, okay, for students who's in grades 10 and 11. So that's quite interesting, the relationship between the president's visit and the incorporation of French. And then in 1991, another 2 ones along, you can see there was a very, well, Colombia's national constitution, which I'm sure you know all about, but it was so important because it was, as far as I know, the first open political recognition of all indigenous languages and of Colombia's multilingual and cultural richnesses. So it again re-emphasizes what was obvious in 1826, but this was in 1991. Right, so, okay, now we're going to go a little bit over to some of the developments in the program now, okay? So, as you know, this morning as well, you had the Ley General de Educación, and notice there was elements of conversation and reading in at least one foreign language. No, it's not very precise. Elements of conversation and reading. What also came up this morning, the Ley de Bilingüismo, and really, this emphasized, you can see, that the idea of in desarrollo y competencias y habilidades que propicien el acceso en condiciones de igualdad y equidad a la oferta de educación superior y oportunidades en los ámbitos empresarial y laboral, con especial énfasis en los departamentos que tengan bajos niveles de cobertura educativa. So notice there that you've got the idea of equality and equity coming out very strongly in the bilingualism law. And then we changed, so this was focusing on bilingualism, as the name says, but then we changed to another emphasis, which is, the Programa Nacional de Inglés. And this was supposed to go initially until 2025, until today. In fact, it didn't quite, but it was quite interesting how it was planned. And it was, and I think you've heard this before, but I'll just repeat a couple of things, that the evaluation that preceded the Programa Nacional de Inglés showed, and you heard about this morning, that more than 50% of students were in A, the lowest level of the Common European Framework, and only 6% of students in grade 11 got to B1. Again, this was emphasized this morning in some of the presentations. However, there was also some reduction of 3% in A-, so that was quite good. And between 2010 and 2013, the level of the teachers, the language level rose. So there were good things as well. Okay, so I just want to now to make, I don't know if I'm looking at you or you. Is it you? To change, okay. Fine. So this comes from a recent study by Norbella Mirando and her team in Univalle. And what they've said, to sum up the educational policies for bilingualism in Colombia recently, there was a reduction of bilingualism to English. Now, if you know, bi means two. Why do we only think of English? Okay, so they criticized this as a reduction in the idea of bilingualism. And again, there was the invisibility of bilingualism among indigenous peoples, raizales, and the Rome community. So again, this is something that came up this morning. So why is bilingualism, or was bilingualism, only seen in relation to English and occasionally to Spanish? And there was also an absence of the mother tongue in bilingual education discourse. And as we know, if you've read some of the studies, well, not only recently, but from the past, that the first language is vital in the development of bilingualism, the idea of transfer from one language to another. Okay? Now then, I'm going to talk about a couple more things to do with the document of the standards. The standards were published, if you remember, in English, and the standards for Spanish, lenguaje. But we interviewed, again, a long time ago, 2011, Ida Salamanca, who was in the British Council at that time, and she said the standards for Spanish were taken from a different model where communicative competence was defined differently from English. And the same happened. There was a distance between basic learning rights in English and in Spanish. So the two languages were definitely seen right from the beginning of the policy of bilingualism as separate. However, there have, and again we've been hearing this morning a little bit, there have been recent attempts to connect. Okay, so we've got in 2013 in the document Orientaciones para la implementación de proyectos de fortalecimiento del inglés en las entidades territoriales, we've got references to the relationship between English as a foreign language and between bilingual education. So that begins to show that the people are seeing things as interconnected. And in another document, Orientations and Pedagogical Principles, directly they say this curricular proposal values the relationship between the two languages, understanding it as a process of interconnected learning. Now notice there, this meeting today, we're talking about connections, and there is the recognition of the interconnected process of learning bilingually. Okay, so as I said to you in the introduction, I'm going to now talk a little bit about some mixed discourses. Okay, so as you heard, and as you know, English very often is seen as a means of attaining competitivity and global development. So, what do we say? It's, Velis White says, a basis on which to construct the competitive capacity of a society, providing people with a comparative advantage, an attribute of their competence and competitivity. So the idea is, yes, you get to speak English and you manage English and you can get a good job, you can go well on with your life. That's one side. And also, but Jaime Usma from in Medellin has criticized this, saying this is an instrumentalization of language learning. If we only learn a language to get a good job, what's that? And Silvia Valencia from the Universidad del Quindío has asked, or she asked in 2005, who in reality benefits from the promotion of bilingualism. So, next one. English is largely seen, as the British Council said in 2015, as a skill for great employability, and this is interesting, regardless of whether English is actually used or necessary in the workplace. So, this was a questioning of really of the discourse of employability and better living conditions, better work conditions. Okay. Next one. Now, I've just on the screen, this comes in fact from Chile. Although you heard Diana Cortez talking about learning languages opens doors this morning, but this comes from Chile in fact. And it's English opens doors for you. And you can see at the bottom of the poster how it may open doors for you, according to the Chilean Ministry of Education. And the Colombian Ministry of Education has also made a lot of emphasis on this idea of opening of doors. Okay? So let's look at the other side to bilingualism and English, in particular relating to English. This is what we heard about this morning too. The ministry says English helps students to open their minds and accept and understand new cultures and promote interchange between different societies. A very different idea from the idea of getting better jobs. The ministry also said that English can diminish ethnocentrism and allow individuals to appreciate and respect the value of their own world, as well as to develop respect for other cultures and appreciation for plurality and difference. So notice the importance, and this is sometimes people have not perhaps realized the idea so much that it is important to value and respect one's own world, as well as understanding, respecting, and valuing plurality and difference and diversity. Okay. So, what reflections can we have based on what I've said just up to now? Well, we can ask, if you are all involved in bilingualism or interested in bilingualism, bilingual education, one must ask, is bilingual education enabling students to understand other cultures? This is what they're saying. Is it true? Is diversity being considered in bilingual education institutions? And are bilingual education programs helping students to understand our multicultural world? So these are some of the questions that can be asked about the present situation of bilingualism and bilingual education here in Colombia. Yeah? So, recent developments. Well, this is Derechos Básicos de Aprendizaje. In 2016, the ministry produced that. And then 2015 was bilingual, Colombia Bilingüe. And I'm going to say a little bit about Colombia Bilingüe, because that was more recent than the one before. Yes? Please? Okay. So notice what the ministry said in 2016. It said, la apuesta del gobierno nacional con el programa Colombia Bilingüe es muy importante y se encuentra alineado directamente con la política nacional lograr que Colombia sea el país más educado de la región en el año 2025. Estamos en el 2025. Yo dejo a ustedes si realmente piensan que Colombia es el país más educado en la región. You don't need to answer, you just need to think. Okay, right. Now then, okay, this is the next slide, or this slide, yes, shows us that there have been actions by the ministry a través de Colombia Aprende, and this talks about, this quote talks about focalization. I'm sure you might remember this idea of focalization, that the idea of the ministry was to direct resources and to programs in territories which needed priority in education, so especially rural areas. And it sounded like a good idea. It was to impact 1,050 teachers and 98,000 students. However, it was criticized, and it was criticized as being unfair because it was only concentrated in certain areas. Well, the name focalization tells you that. But people then said, well, my area is equally valid, equally important. Why is this area getting it, or this town, and not mine? And the other difficulty was that there was the idea, which sounds very good, of co-teaching by the teachers and by the native trainers of English. Now, and I think you heard this morning that the government or the Ministry of Education financed native speakers from English-speaking areas of the world to come and help out. There was criticism because especially the English teachers in Colombia said, well, listen, why are you getting native English speakers? We are non-native. So this was reduced to the time NEST, native English speakers, and the other one was non-native English speakers. So there was a question, how far are we really valuing the skills and levels of understanding and knowledge of the teachers in Colombia, and we're bringing in people who speak English, yes, of course, but not necessarily, don't know the situation of Colombia, they haven't had the experience. So that was, again, a difficult time, although there was some progress made in that. Okay? Now there has been a big change in ministry policy. So now the ministry, according to what came out, we're not talking about Colombia bilingüe. We're talking about multilingüismo. Multilingüismo enfocado hacia la construcción de competencias de ciudadanos globales que reconocen su identidad y cultura. Notice the idea of global citizenship. So we've moved out of Colombia, and we're looking at projection to the world. And they're also emphasizing identity and culture. Maybe we should say identities and cultures, because we know that we all have many different identities, and we all belong to, or at least are in contact with, different cultures. So maybe this should be in the plural. Okay, so there is a need, and I think this came out strongly in what you've heard this morning. There's a need for an intercultural perspective in bilingual teaching and learning. And I think the ministry, from what we heard this morning, is definitely taking this on board. It's a new, for me, it's a new angle from the ministry, and very interesting. Why is it necessary? Well, according to Lair, there are strong forces at play creating economic, social, cultural, or ecological tensions among individuals and nations. And as we all know, we live in a complex and interconnected world. Languages and intercultural relationships increasingly are recognized as hybrid. It's not just one or the other. It's much more complex than that. And therefore, we need, and this is important from what Lair says, we need to think of an education which takes into account the increasingly mobile, plural human being needing to be bi or multilingual. So how far, I put it to you, how far do you consider yourselves mobile, mobile, plural human beings? And how far are your students also considered mobile, plural human beings? It may be that they consider that no, they belong to this area and this is where they're going to live, and but more and more there are pressures for, well, look at the videos, look at the television in Colombia. You get a lot of influence from abroad. And the question that could be asked is, a key question, yeah? How can we help different actors in these education processes, particularly teachers and students, to understand and to experience bilingual and intercultural relationships and move from recognition to the development of practice? And this morning, it was interesting to see some of these initiatives that you have developed in your different scenarios, and moving from understanding to practice. So I'm going to just talk to you a little bit about a couple more. Yes? Well, before I do that, this is quite an interesting quote from Cramps and Giorgio, and it's something that perhaps we don't always recognize when, as teachers of languages. especially if you come from another country. The challenges. So, as Claire Cramch says, learning a new language is taking risks by placing oneself in a position of uncommon subordination and powerlessness. So, if you've ever had, as I had many years ago in London, I had a class of executives, and they were a beginner's class. And I remember how they suffered because they could only say very basic things in English. Their English didn't lead to more. And they found this quite humiliating, that they couldn't really control as they used to do in their own language. Or languages, it was from various countries. And as Giorgio says, it entails sounding less intelligent than in one's mother tongue and learning new socialization patterns of another culture at the risk of acting the wrong way. And if many of you have traveled not only abroad, but also in different parts of, for example, Colombia, you may be at risk of acting the wrong way if you don't know about the local customs, the local ways of being. So, what is the aim, of the intercultural dimension in bilingual teaching and learning? Okay, so that, and we heard this morning, to develop intercultural speakers or mediators, and that's a term that came up this morning, that maybe as people who understand somewhat about interculturality, we may be asked to mediate in disputes, cultural disputes, to engage with complexity and multiple identities. And again, this involves a recognition that one is involved in having multiple identities, and to avoid stereotyping, which accompanies perceiving someone through a single identity. And I remember children, a fifth-year group, this was in Cali some time ago, and they were asked about English people, what do they think? And they said, boring, what else did they say, something? Known for tea, they said, which... So there were certain characteristics of English people that they felt were really, this defined English people. They didn't know anybody. So these were the stereotypes. And so you can see that you are able to perceive your interlocutor from another country, from another culture, as an individual with qualities to be discovered. Now, I just very want to show you. Okay, online, a group of us created a MOOC. I don't know if you know the word MOOC. No? It's a massive, open, online course, MOOC. And this one is called Understanding Intercultural Dimensions in Everyday Life. So if you are interested, you can log on to this MOOC. You've got the address there. And it's 4 modules. One is in Spanish, one is in English, and 2 are in French. So you can listen and find out more if you're interested about intercultural dimensions in everyday life. And this is this MOOC that we connected. Okay, so now another question which will take us to a bit more further on. Why is an English-only policy, which has been up to now, why is that tantamount to bilingualism for the government? And why are other types of bilingualism with relevant or official languages such as Spanish Muisca, Spanish Ticuna, or even multilingualism, Spanish, English, Portuguese, not part of the bilingual milieu? Or were not part, I have to say. And I'm just going to talk very quick, just refer to the Constitution of Colombia. in the Article 7, they say that the state is the protector of the cultural ethnicity and diversity. So that's important, that in Colombia there's an actual recognition of that. And also the recognition that Spanish, while Spanish is the official language of Colombia, that languages and dialects of other of ethnic groups are also official in their territories. So again, this is, I think, for me, it was the first time that, as I said before, that this was the case. And then on the next one, in Article 70, it says that the state has a duty to provide access to the culture of all Colombians and the equality in equality. And they also say that the state will promote the development and spread of the cultural values of the nation. So notice very much emphasizing cultural diversity and cultural values. Now, we in 2025, Nobella Miranda, I've already referred to her project, and started a very interesting project to do with bilingualism and a bottom-up project. You heard from Diana this morning talking about the importance of bottom-up projects. And this was to talk about, to rely on the expertise of local policy agents, okay? So it wasn't bringing in foreigners, it was local policy agents to privilege students' life experiences and culture, to reflect students' life projects within their context with particular ways of being, feeling, doing, acting, and inhabiting the world. And you've heard a little bit about these this morning. However, this is slightly different. I'd like you to look at the next slide. And what do you see there? You see an illustration of the Misag community in Cauca. And you see a booklet which is called Once Upon a Time, Our Ancestors Said. So why is that in English? Well, it was an initiative of this group to promote English language learning among indigenous communities, but based on their own ethnic and cultural background. So the stories, the language used is English, but it's based on cultural understandings of this particular community. I think I don't know how many booklets they've got out, but the one I know about is the one in the Cauca. So this was a really interesting development, which I don't think has been tried before, to use indigenous cultural aspects to promote English learning. Okay, next one, please. And this is just, I'm not going to go through this, but this is just the way they started to do it with, first of all, a survey, and then they went through various stages. And in the survey, they asked 43 indigenous students to what they thought was important in their culture in relation to learning another language. And then finally, just before the production of the booklet, they asked 31 both indigenous and non-indigenous students in the piloting phase. So they had a lot of input from the communities they worked with. And in the next slide, you can see reaction. This is one of the students who took the course, the English course based on indigenous cultural aspects. And she said, yo creo que este tipo de material nos ayuda a profundizar mucho más en lo que es nuestra identidad como indígenas. One would think, why on earth? Y no solamente eso, porque es una mirada ya desde otro idioma, que de pronto, en algunas ocasiones, se nos dificulta más a nosotros como pertenecientes a comunidades indígenas, pero a pesar de ello, relacionarlo, el inglés, con nuestros orígenes puede fortalecer aún más que podamos aprender de este otro idioma. So that's a very interesting comment about the possibility, the potential of learning English, but from a very different cultural perspective. Now, I'm going to coming to the end of my presentation, yes, I think, to look at we've been talking about policies, we've been talking about different ways of interpreting policy, but what about teacher education and professional development? Okay, next one, please. Okay, so I don't know if you are aware of this, but there has been a shift in teacher education, in foreign language teacher education. There's a change from a view of teaching as a technical endeavor to a critical teacher education, seeing teachers as transformative agents, and that was something that came up this morning too, the idea of transformation and being an agent of change. And there's, in what has traditionally been rather static, prescriptive professional development, especially in the States, and decontextualized knowledge. So much of the knowledge, including in professional development, has failed to include many of the roles that bilingual teachers are involved in. And you might be aware of that too. So I'm just going to show very briefly two very different views of teachers' roles. So this is one, experts and teachers. You can decide which one you think is better. In the ELT literature, the practitioner, the teacher, is often an afterthought who implements what experts in the government, Board of Education or Central School Administration have already decided. The practitioner, the teacher, often needs to be educated, studied, cajoled, tolerated, even replaced by better prepared teachers who are even more compliant. This is from Risento and Hornberger in 1996. So this is very much the idea that teachers have to implement, the power is with the government or with the Board of Education, but not with the teachers. Am I all right for time or not? Yes? Okay. The second one is one that is very different. The teacher, and this comes from Ofelia Garcia, the teacher must stop being an instructor, accepting of orders, of curriculum planned, of material given, and must claim her role as an educator, empowering the community she teaches by providing it with the appropriate knowledge and resources it needs. Only then will teachers feel empowered to transform practices that can, little by little, crack by crack, impact on societal goals. So notice we have as teachers the power to transform, and that is so important to really recognize the power we have and to act as agents of change or transformative agents. Okay. So what are the implications of this to promote change in teacher education programs, for teacher education programs in Colombia? Well, yes, next one. I won't go on very long here, but I'll just tell you that from 2011, 2014, I was working in Universidad de los Andes in Bogotá, and we conducted a project with Universidad del Quindío in Armenia, and we wanted to find out how far it was possible for teachers to generate changes in their pedagogical practices, in the classrooms, in order to revert power structures and work collaboratively with the aim of improving communicative competence interaction in the English class. So we worked with 4 secondary school teachers, 2 in Armenia and 2 in Bogota, and we had classroom observation, reflective diaries, interviews, final reflection, and a survey. So what came out of that? These are some of the reactions from the participants, from the interviews. According to one of the teachers, the key to success, and this is very important when we think about colleagues, the people we work with, the key to success was the institutional administrative support. So how far does the rector, the vice-rector support these changes? And colleagues as well, and the educational community. And this teacher in the interview in Armenia said, es vital la formación profesional en lo que permite el día a día en la enseñanza. En lo que no funciona, la teoría hace reflexionar y mejorar lo que se hace en la práctica. La reflexión que hace es lo que permite mirar para dónde va. Hay que hablar con otros, hay que leer, está en contacto con otros. And I think that's really important, this idea of reflection, that we are not automatic, we don't automatically put into practice certain degrees or certain ways of teaching, that we reflect, and the importance of connecting with colleagues. Again, this is very much in relation to what we are celebrating today here, because it's very difficult, and I'm sure you know, to institute change alone. It can be a very difficult process. Right, so within all this, there is the importance of local research evidence. And I think what I was thinking when I heard this morning, 1 minute, oh my goodness. All right, I'll just do this one and then I'll go to the end. What I was thinking this morning was these projects that were presented, you could actually write them up and disseminate them, share them with other teachers. And because they constitute the basis of research. So you could do this. So what does Kutnap Kangas? She says, sharing local studies globally can lead to better theory and action for more social justice and equity through education. And as Carlo Granado said, it is important for, again, I'm going to have to read it. It is important for language teachers to recognize themselves as professionals who are able to construct rather than consume knowledge by engaging in educational research that enables them to be critical of language teaching facts. So there you are. You have both an international researcher and a very national researcher that you know very well. Right. So can we go on to almost the end? I think we'll have to go. Yes, go on. Okay, just hang on. Okay. Just on that one, you can just see that now the ministry is talking about Lenguas y Ciudadanía Global, Programa Nacional de Fortalecimiento de Competencia en Lenguas Extranjeras. So now we're talking about global citizenships, as I said before. Can we go on? Yeah, go on. Okay, just very quickly, this is the theory of changes, comes from the Ministry of Education, and it, among all the different ways that one can innovate as teachers, they refer to, on the left-hand side at the bottom, you can see culture, cultura, biculturalidad, interculturalidad, identidad, contenidos para aprender y soñar. And then in the next one, you have, again, I'm not going to talk much about this, well, I haven't got time, but they talk about two interesting things among all those other things, is ecosistemas de bilingüismo para promover enseñanza y aprendizaje en lenguas en colaboración con el gobierno, sector productivo, otras organizaciones. Y multilingüismo con enfoque funcional, priorizando hacer cosas con las lenguas. And so, can we just go on to the penultimate one? Yes, go on. Go on. Okay, I just want to leave you with that image of the bilingual person. Notice in the brain you've got the two languages interacting. You've got probably input in one language and output in the other. But nowadays people are talking about translanguaging more and more. So maybe this diagram needs to be redone so that instead of having a blue in and an orange out, we have blue and orange mixed together in the outside world. So last one. Thank you very much. Muchas gracias. Imagino que no hay tiempo para preguntas, ¿cierto?
En el networking.
En el networking. Okay, fine. All right.
There will be, but not right now.
Okay.
Okay, so thank you so much. Please give Anne-Marie a warm round of applause again. So thank you, Dr. Anne-Marie, for your generous insight and for accompanying us in this important milestone for the National Network of Bilingualism, and for your extensive research and visionary approach, which have inspired generations of educators and researchers in this field. With this being said, now we are going to move to our third and last round of Pechacucha presentations. We are going to begin with one of the virtual ones we have available. It is entitled Communicative Performance, Forjando Líderes para el Siglo XXI, and it will be presented by Corporación Colegio Cumbres Medellín. We are going to begin with that one. Okay, so while we set everything for our third round of Pechacucha presentations, I'm going to give a brief reminder. So those are going to be 6-minute presentations about some projects related or regarding bilingualism presented by national institutions. So they are going to have 6 minutes to present it by using the slides. And after this third round of Pechacucha presentations, we are going to have the networking. So remember, for those who have not found their name, Each table has a name, the name of the presentation, so we ask the presenters to go there and sit over there because it is vital for us to have the networking session afterwards. So if you have not looked for yours, please look for it and get ready for the networking session, which will begin once we have concluded with this third round of Pechacucha presentations.
Let me read the introduction. I um, thank you for having us here. Who hasn't faced these kind of challenges within the classroom, within our college, high school, even in job applications? We've had different candidates with this kind of troubles while communicating the message. So, Cumbres, Medellin, faced that challenge of transform just communicators of messages in competent communicators of messages. That's communicative performance.
Okay, so once that we know that there's this need of including communication as a part of our curriculum, we have to divide this need into three parts. First, self-knowledge, then interpersonal communication, and third, how do we communicate that message that we have to the world? So first of all, we need to divide that self-knowledge into four parts. First, my emotions and how do I self-regulate those emotions. Second, what are my communicative skills? What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? And how do I strengthen them? Then, what is my personality archetype and what is yours? And how do we balance that for to improve our communication? And fourth, how do I manage and cope with stressful situations into a regular life?
To continue with our curriculum, we have interpersonal communication. In a world where fighting and arguing over data, over logic has become the rule, we thought our students need competent communication, but also emotional communication, solving daily conflicts. So here we manage conflicts in highly charged communicative context. We give them the context and they have to solve different conflicts. First of all, managing the empathy and the biases we have while we communicate in English with other people around the world. Why? Because we think and we believe that empathy builds bridges between people, and this leads to actual communication in which is enriched by everything you think and what the other people think about it too. And finally, we thought, okay, we have my perception of other people while communicating. Now, the power of the message. What's the power of my message? It's not what I have to say, but how do I transmit this information to the people around? So this is content. And in content creation curriculum, we found first the power of pictures, learning how to not draw, but how to communicate through comic. Next, we move in 5th grade to television, public speaking. In 6th grade, they learn the power of their voices. How? Through podcasting. In 7th grade, our students learn about artificial intelligence, how to use it in favor, and how to avoid the different biases that AI has in our world, and how influencers use them in their favor. Last, we have oratory in 8th grade, when our real life leaders take their message and make powerful presentations with their voice, their body, and their thoughts.
And finally, but obviously not the last important thing, how does that involve with the multilingual environment that we promote here in Cumbres? Obviously, languages around the world. We don't live in a country that it's outside of this world. We live in a multicultural country surrounded by all kinds of different languages, all kinds of different cultures. And that's what the world needs right now. And that's what these subject wants to involve our students with. We need to include them in this world. We need to globalize them. We need to make them a part of the world. And that's what communicative performance is about. It's not only about Spanish and English, it's about French, it's about other cultures, it's about German, Portuguese. And that's what we want to strengthen in them, all of those cultures and the craziness and the richness of the world. And finally, that's what Cumbres saw, the need of the world, and that's what we are solving. The problem that we are solving with this is not only about the academic thing, it's also about what our students need nowadays, the communication. We are solving the needs of the future with this. We want to we want students that are able to spread their message through their conviction and their values, through assertiveness, through empathy and clarity. And finally, making them the leaders of the 21st century that this world needs. Thank you so much for your attention and welcome to Cumbres Medellin.
Have a nice afternoon, people.
Thank you so much for that presentation. Thank you so much, Corporación Colegio Cumbres de Medellín. And with this, we close our broadcast in YouTube. So thank you so much for all the people that has been with us during this journey, during this event. So we hope you enjoy what we have done today and can join us in the future.